Meeting of Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission will now come to order. Time 5:30 p.m. March 14th, 2013. Happy Pi Day, everyone. The Pledge of Allegiance. If there's a flag there and someone there could lead it at Evan's house.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. And I think we have the roll call established. All five senators are either on the phone or at Evan's house. We have Joe Cainfield and Mary O'Grady, our legal counsel. And then I know Ray Bladine's there, our executive director. And do we have Christine Gomez?
Yes, and actually, Mary and Joe are in Mary's office. They're not here with us in the Evans house.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from staff that I've missed?
From staff, Buck and Marty's not staff, but we think of him as staff.
His family.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Willie from Strategic Telemetry. I'm on the phone as well.
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry, Willie. I didn't know you were on the phone. Willie Desmond. And then I think that's everybody. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Hearing none. We'll go ahead and move to agenda item 2, legal advice, direction to council, discussion and possible action regarding 1, district court decision on legislative privilege in the matter of Harris versus AIRC, including possible appellate review. 2, discussion about counsel for individual commissioners in pending litigation. And 3, on other pending court challenges, including Leach versus AIRC. The commission may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for the purpose of obtaining legal advice and providing direction to counsel. So with that, I'll ask Joe and Mary to tell us what they'd like to tell us.
Well, our recommendation would be that we go into executive session so we can address the issues on the agenda.
Okay, do I hear a motion to go into executive session to discuss these items on the agenda?
Madam Chair, this is Jose.
Mr. Herrera?
Before we go into executive session, is there anything that can be discussed in public session from the agenda?
Legal counsel, is there anything that can be discussed in public?
Well, we can say that the status of the cases we in Harris, the specific mentioned in the agenda is the decision on legislative privilege, which the court issued in end of February. We just got the ruling that denied our motion as presented, but permitted discovery on the central issues in the case. And then I think, as you all know, we have a firm trial date in that matter, and so it's scheduled to go to trial November 5th, March. March 25th. And so we have lots of deadlines that we're meeting in order to be ready for that trial date. And then, as you know, we have did retain counsel for all the separate counsel for all the commissioners, in part at the urging of the court when we were addressing the issue of waiver of legislative privilege, and in the Harris case. And we do have 2 other pending lawsuits. The one that's mentioned in the agenda, Leach, is pending in state court, and that is the challenge to the congressional districts based on various state constitutional theories. And we, the court had granted parts of our motion to dismiss, and then there had been a new complaint filed that repled some of the counts that had been previously dismissed. We filed a subsequent motion to dismiss because we thought they were still not adequate under the court's earlier ruling. The court denied our subsequent motion to dismiss, and so that's the status of that case. That just happened within the last few weeks. Joe?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, the only other thing I'd add is that we do have a responsive pleading due in the Leach case tomorrow by extension, and that would be the date that we would file our answer.
So, then there is another case pending with, in federal court, which is the state legislature's challenge of the commission's authority to do congressional redistricting at all under the federal elections clause, and in that case, our motion to dismiss is pending, and our motion regarding whether a three-judge panel is appropriate in that case is pending. And so with that, I think that's the update on the status, and so I would like to provide further advice and get direction in executive session.
Madam Chair, this is Linda McNulty. I would move that we go into executive session for the purpose of considering the items in the agenda item.
Do I hear a second?
I second that. This is Jose.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. McNulty.
Aye.
And we'll vote afterwards. And then any opposed? Okay, I didn't hear any nays, so I'm assuming all 5 commissioners voted aye, but did anyone vote nay or abstain? Okay, so the time now is 5:39 p.m. We'll exit out of public session, and I'm not sure if there's public in the room there, but I still have to clear out, I guess, and come back once we go back into public session.
Okay, there's a,
6:19 p.m. We'll enter back into public session. I don't know if we still have Mr. Desmond on the phone. Are you there, Willie? He dropped off. I guess he has dialed back in. But we are now, sorry, I'm pulling the agenda again.
Breaking up.
On agenda item 3, the executive director will summarize recent staff activities and respond to commissioners' questions. So I assume that will be Mr. Bladine or Ms. Gomez.
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Christina to go ahead and start, and then I'll talk later about the last memo we sent out to you late today. Christina?
Madam Chair, Commissioner members, just really briefly, current staff activity, we still have three staff members. We have Lisa Schmeling and Shane Shields. They've been working with legal counsel on data collection, and they're still collecting public input and some media clippings. So they've been really busy, though, mostly working on the lawsuits with legal counsel. And also, Anna Garcia is still with us. She is still in charge of processing all invoices, assisting with contracts, and setting up meetings with legislative members. Recently, we've been at the Capitol this past week, meeting with staff on a second supplemental request. So we will give you an update, I believe, tomorrow on our staff activity. And just this past, I believe this past week, you've received 4 different emails from the office. Thank you. Regarding the budget, you received an email packet of the revised JLBC report that was submitted to JLBC on March 8th, and I forwarded the packet to you on the 13th. The second packet that went out was the letter that was submitted to President Biggs and to Speaker Tobin. That email, I believe you received on March 11th. And the third packet was an email from myself and from Ray on March 11th, and that is the regular monthly budget packet. The last email that was submitted this morning, and that is a budget update. Last night, Ray and I, and early this morning, we finally went through some more analysis of the budget, and we submitted the spreadsheet, the latest spreadsheet to you this morning. So with that, I believe Mr. Bladeen has some further information regarding this budget.
Madam Chair, Commission members, the budget that we have been working off that showed a $551,000 need for additional appropriation was based upon the direction that the legislative leadership wanted us to follow, and that was to develop litigation budgets for each of the cases and then put those into a request for 13 and a request for 14. Well, as you all know, things have been going very rapidly, and it became clear to us last night that that budget, litigation budget, while only several weeks old, was very different than what we developed before. And it was obvious that Christina and I needed to try to see when we would run out of funds. So the analysis we did last night and this morning shows that more likely we would be in the hole $719,000 by the end of this fiscal year. The biggest concern, and if you look at the spreadsheet that's attached there, the biggest concern I have is that we have bills, some actual and some unpaid for March, but that March work is primarily for work done in February, and the work that'll be done in March will be paid in April. We're usually a month behind. Given the level of expenditure we've been having, it appears to us that we may not even have enough money to pay bills through the end of March. And a good part of that is I think we ended up with higher individual litigation expenses than we thought. We also ended up with more deposition costs than we thought when the budget was developed. So we put this together to get a better idea of our cash flow. Just to update you on the next part of that, you can see in the memo I'm suggesting that it may be appropriate for me at this time to notify all of the attorneys that any work that they will be doing may be subject to appropriation, because it does not appear as if we have the funding right now that I can certify and pay bills that I don't have an appropriation for. I know you all remember we went through this last year, and I was hoping to avoid it this year. But at this point, I'm pretty nervous that I need to put people on notice that until we get an appropriation, I can't guarantee that I will pay a bill. And Mary and Joe may want to comment on that. This afternoon, we met with Wendy Baldo, the Chief of Staff in the Senate, and we presented the updated information to her and talked to her about how critical the time level was at this point. She was going to try to talk to the President of the Senate today. We haven't heard back from her. Everybody at the state capitol basically tells us they're so tied up in the access budgeting issues that trying to get any other attention on something else right now is very difficult. They all know we need the money, and I don't want to say they all, but the leadership knows we need the money. The leadership knows the Constitution says it needs to be paid. But at this point, we don't have an assurance that we can get it done by April 1st. We will have a meeting, I believe it's next week, with President Biggs, and I think we'll have a meeting next week with Representative Kavanaugh in the House side. And in the past, it was really the two of them that understood our problem and helped us get the supplemental appropriation. So we are kind of continuing the way we did last year in terms of working with the leadership and making sure they're informed and answering any questions they have. But at this time, I don't have any assurance that the timing is going to work for us. Just to, one final thing, I know that the sticker shock of now we're already up to $715,000 is probably not something that's going to set well or be very easy for leadership to provide funding on. It would seem to me that if we at least got the 551 and an assurance that we could use 14 money in 13, as we did this last year, it could get us through the end of this year. And like this year, we would start out a little behind, and we'd probably find ourselves in about the same situation in March, April, January of next year. But the biggest issue, we've talked about it before, is it's very hard to estimate the litigation budgets when it's constantly moving. In the past, we asked for a set aside of up to $500,000 to cover bills that we don't know that we'll have. The legislature has been reluctant to provide that, so we find ourselves trying to struggle through supplemental appropriations that will allow us to meet our constitutional responsibility to defend the maps. So that is our report. I would welcome any questions, suggestions, comments on how we're proposing to proceed.
Madam Chair, this is Jose.
Mr. Herrera?
Mr. Glady, you mentioned a couple of times, and I think Mr. Grady did as well, about the fees from the individual attorneys. Can you let me know, give us a rough estimate of what the totals were for the month of February?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Herrera, the spreadsheet that I sent out to you early, or I guess mid-morning, indicates the actual amounts we've paid by attorney for the month of March, and it includes all attorneys, what bills we have received but not yet processed, and then what we would anticipate is bills in March that we have not received yet but are likely to come in March to basically pay the February amount. So if you take a look at March unpaid in red, you can see that we have had about $33,000 in one case, 16 in another, 31 in another. Right now, I'm guessing maybe 16,000 each in the other two.
Mr. Bladine, I don't have the form in front of me. Can you read to me who those charges are for?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Herrera, the March actual, which in the first, let's see, how am I going to do this? Ballard Spar was paid $68,000 in March. We expect they'll have.
I was referring to the individual commissioners, not necessarily Mr. Grady or.
Okay. Let me see. We have not had a bill yet from Coppersmith Schemer. I'm estimating it at $16,000. We don't have a bill yet from Gallagher Kennedy. I'm estimating it at $16,000. We had a minor bill from Tim Nelson for $620. Brian Bergen has submitted an invoice for $33,000. Michael Mandel has submitted it.
Mr. Bladine, can you stop? The $33,000. I don't know. I don't recognize the attorney. And what is it for?
Mr. Bergen is the attorney that is providing legal service to Commissioner Freeman.
$33,000.
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead. Then
Michael Mandel, of course, is providing service to you, and our bill for him was $16,043. John Munger, who provides legal services to Commissioner Sturts, has billed $31,714. I would expect, since that bill was for the first part of February, that we'll probably have additional charges in March, but I didn't estimate it this time because I'm not sure. So those are basically the attorneys representing the individual commissioners.
Mr. Bladine, this is Colleen.
Madam Chair.
Something you said concerned me, and that was that there's no assurance that the timing will work out this time.
It could,
And that's a little concerning. Is there any movement from, the legal, have you talked to legal counsel, or what do people suggest so that we're able to defend ourselves properly in these lawsuits?
Madam Chair, perhaps Mary or Joe would care to comment. I will keep working to get some assurances about timing over the next few days. I do think at this point the only thing I can think of is to legally notify the attorneys that their pay is going to be subject to appropriation, and hope that they will continue to do what it is, knowing that at some point the legislature will fulfill its constitutional duty. But obviously I'm not an attorney, and I don't know what sort of problems that may commit for all of them in terms of their own operations.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, this is Joe. We've been asked this question before, and the answer that we've given in the past is that Ray and Christina should continue to work with the legislature. There's been 2 occasions now where we've been in this situation with some uncertainty, and on both occasions the legislature has provided a supplemental appropriation to the commission. So rather than speculate at this point about what legal remedies would be available should the legislature not provide supplemental funding, we would prefer the discussion focus on working with the legislature. As Ray mentioned earlier, he had several meetings with key legislators and staff that are tuned into the issue, and they do have the ability to move a supplemental appropriation along. The key is just making sure we're communicating with the right people, which we are doing. So at this point, I would rather not speculate as to what would happen if they don't do the appropriation. We, of course, will continue to work on preparing for trial and try not to let this be a distraction, but it should be in that situation where there isn't a supplemental appropriation, then we may very well want to suggest that the commission reconvene a meeting, and then we can discuss legal options at that time.
And record, Joe, I'm not think that a legal remedy be pursued at this time, but I am concerned, and having been down this road before, we do know that we're not supposed to be taking expenditures past our appropriation or over our appropriation, and so I'm just trying to be mindful of that, and also be pragmatic that we need to defend ourselves. We need the funding to do that.
Madam Chair, this is Joe. I appreciate that. I wasn't suggesting anything other than keep communicating with the legislature. If we do, if it appears that a supplemental appropriation will not be forthcoming before the funding runs out, then we will have to discuss what the commission's options are. I mentioned that this commission has received a supplemental appropriation twice. The last commission received one, at least one, on one occasion that I'm aware of. And the last commission did, in fact, file a lawsuit, a special action in the Arizona Supreme Court when it appeared that they were not going to receive a supplemental appropriation, and they had a trial coming up and needed to continue working. And I think that situation was complicated by the fact that the legislature wasn't in session, if I recall correctly. So I understand the legislature, the messages that they are distracted with budget and Medicaid expansion and everything else, but at the same time, they do have the ability, the Appropriations Committee meets weekly. I am hopeful that the legislature will work with the commission to provide it appropriate supplemental funding and to avoid any unnecessary litigation on the subject as they have in the past. So I appreciate what the point you've made, Madam Chair, and assure you that we will be ready to advise the commission if we get into that situation, but I'm just not ready to offer that advice at this point.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Mr. Bladine, and you're anticipating now that just based on what you know, and you know it's very hard to guesstimate what happens, but that we'll be out of money, our current money, by the end of March. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It could be earlier depending on some of the bills I haven't seen yet, and that's why I got anxious about putting people on notice. But we think that we can make it through March. We clearly can't make it through April. But as I say, the thing that worries me, I really haven't seen a lot of the bills yet for March that we'll be getting, but we should be able to make it through March.
Okay, so 2 weeks or so. Great. Any other questions for Mr. Bladine or Ms. Gomez?
Madam Chair, let me suggest something. I want to protect the commission and myself for not spending money we don't have, but I don't want to do it prematurely. I guess what I would think is that I will give, if I don't hear an objection, I will hold off sending a letter till perhaps Tuesday of next week, and then if I can't get some assurance about timing, I will put on official notice the legal staff that it's going to be subject to a future appropriation. So hearing no objection or other direction, that's what I'll do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bladine and Ms. Gomez.
Thank you.
That concludes agenda item 3. Number 4 is call for public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
Madam Chair, Scott, we have no public comment.
Oh, okay. Do we have public there?
Yes, 2.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming, the 2 of you. Anything else before I adjourn the meeting? Okay, the time is 6:39 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.